Good morning. I'm on East Coast time, so I'm still trying to figure this out. But I've never been in a position where I'm before lunch and after lunch. So I know that right now you're hungry, and then afterwards you'll be sleepy. So let's see if we can get through this the way that you would feel like you would get the best out of it. So yeah, I'm in from Durham, North Carolina, and as you know, we are the home of the NCAA champions, Duke Blue Devils. I'm a Carolina guy, but I just have to represent because I'm on film, and I know they're watching me. And I really wanted to talk about this Made in Durham, where we focus on education to career systems, and I think it's appropriate that I come right after you in talking about the next generation. And in our work, what we're trying to do with this Made in Durham collaborative is to make sure that we are able to build a local education and career system for our youth. While Durham is the environment, we have a positive environment with Duke University and North Carolina Central University. And we have Duke, as you may or may not know, in our state, is the second largest employer in the whole state behind Walmart. So they actually make a real economic impact in our community. And being a nonprofit, they don't have to pay taxes, so their participation in the public-private partnership is always very critical as we developed our city. Additionally, we are home of a Research Triangle Park, as you know. And in Research Triangle Park, we have a lot of corporations like an IBM, Lenovo, Cisco, and those are also big employers. So we have this rich intellectual capital base of people wanting to be there because of the place-based economies. But then we also have this real problem of youth that are unemployed. And we recognize that with youth unemployed, there's always this boiling point if you don't get them employed and keep them engaged. Seeing things like Ferguson and Baltimore is not uncommon. It's just that it happened. So I think it's important that we focus on that. So our key is to really get employers to be co-creators of this education to career system. And as they find themselves being invested, they'll get their own kind of return on investment from this work. So I'll just try to get through these slides. So we talk about each year Durham creates thousands of jobs, and however, a lot of these jobs, students are not ready. And when they're not ready, you figure out that they can't get engaged, they can't get employed, and things don't work out well for them. And we talked a little bit about what's happening in our job market, but you see that Durham's one of the top 35 places in the country for growth. We have entertainment and media, we have social entrepreneurship, a lot of things that you've heard today. We have that in our community. We have manufacturing and service, science and technology, but yet we have young people that are between 16 and 19 that are unemployed, and then 20 to 24 that are unemployed. And there's a particular focus on the African American community and the Latino community. And we're also in an interesting space in that we have a community that's probably equally divided between majority and minorities. So you get a chance to really see the rich nature of how we taking this youth and building on them is going to be very important. While 80% of our students in our city are kids of color. So it's really important that we do work with the education system to build this out. So one of the things that we really wanted to do is close this achievement gap. We recognize there's some kids that are on track, some kids that are behind, and some kids that are considered disconnected or opportunity youth. And we know that our school system are tracking some of these kids, and we want to make sure that if we've got 44,000 youth and young adults, that we find a way to make sure those 44,000 are producers and not just consumers. And one of the ways that we do that is to keep them on track for where we think they're going. So this is the cost of inequity. You get health and social outcomes that work this way, and then you have this income inequity. So while we're a city that's big on making sure that we get paid a livable wage, which is more than minimum wage, so in our community, as you all know, the minimum wage is, I think it's $7.25. Our livable wage in our city is more like $12 because we recognize you can't really live on $7. That still keeps you below poverty and being able to get the things that you need to move forward. So this talks a little bit about things that you already know. We've talked about over and over again the link between education and health. And if we know that people are educated, they're more likely to do the right things in making sure their health works. So this new creation of this Made in Durham leadership is really interesting because we were able to bring together some of the key leaders. Dr. Zal, who is now the president of the Institute of Health, was at Duke University, and he led this effort. And he brought together some of the nonprofit leaders, the government leaders, the public school system, the county, the city, information, Cisco, Wells Fargo, McKinney, Self-Help, my organization, Institute of Minority Economic Development, the education component of community education, the chancellors of the schools, and said, listen, how do we become co-collaborators of looking at the ecosystem of making sure our workforce development is trained and that we get those people employed so that we can have a better society. So one of the things that really focused on is how do we take this misalignment of how we are not collaborating on this cooperation and create some alignment so we're all working together to go to the same spaces. I know lunch is coming. I'm going. I'm moving. Stay with me. So the vision in this was to say, how do we take the kids that are on track, behind and disconnected, and realize that's the model, that's our basis, and then move them through the system. Let's create multiple educational pathways. So some of our schools, we've changed them. So we now have a school that's called the City of Medicine, preparing students to graduate with their high school degree, but they also get a chance to be CNAs or learn how to do phlebotomy and all those other things, and they work in these hospitals. We also have a school that focuses on mechanics and becoming industrial and doing those things. So how do you move, understanding that people learn differently and they have different requirements for their job employments? So why don't we do that and create some enabling components to make that work so that at the end they can be citizens and workers, lifelong learners, and parents that we know that are building healthy families in our city. So the whole idea was to create this and to create some post-secondary education and some credentialing for these students so when they come out they can have some additional credentialing so they can be more attractive to employers. And then secure a livable wage by the time they were 25, recognizing that some people will go to college and some won't. But there's enough economic opportunities out there. And some of the work that I do outside, I tell people that, plumbers make around $70 an hour, right? Depending on what city you're in, state. And when I talk to these young kids, I keep saying, you only call a plumber when you need a plumber, right? Right? Talk back to me. I know y'all tired. I'm trying to keep y'all awake. Have mercy. Hallelujah. And usually when you call a plumber, you need a plumber. How fast do they work? Yeah, we all agree, right? So I have fun times with these students. I say, great, so let's do this model. $70 an hour, 8 hours a day, because they work at a certain pace to get it done right? Because we know they're working for perfection. You figure that's how much, then we go through this whole education model. I go 8, that's 5 times 77, we go through the 8 hours times 5 times, y'all figuring this out? This is a lot of money. 70 times 8, I know y'all in medicine, but work with me. That's $560, right? That times 5 days a week, y'all not there yet, right? So that's about $2,500. And if you do $2,500 times 4 weeks, we're talking about some real money. And those are some of the things we try to train our students to recognize. There's so much opportunity that you can't necessarily divest yourself from. And how do we get people involved? So we try to weave them into the employment, understanding that they can track performance and build some meaningful, purposeful relationships with the corporations. And then we recognize there's some ecosystem in this, right? So we want to make sure that we have some collaborative effort in our community collaboration. So we want to develop these ideas, plan public launch. We did alignment for improvement, and so now we're reflecting and create some scale so that we can use this as a model over and over again. So the key employer roles is that they become strategic leaders and they're board members. So as board members and strategic leaders, they're going to invest in making sure that this works. We even had the school system gave $100,000 towards the project. The county and the city each gave $100,000 towards the project. Duke gave $100,000 towards the project. So people are investing in the Made in Durham process, and they're following the conclusions of what may happen from this. And the goals for these employees are to create this applied learning to move forward. And then this is really the model that we focused on, is that we went backwards. We focused on looking at this business employer's objectives. And if you focus on their objectives and the requirements and the training that's needed, then we come back to the young people and then we curve it around and say, to move forward, you got to get you here, get you trained, meet the requirements, and then get the employers. So in this whole thing, we're able to measure the impact of where our students are in moving down this spectrum so that we can make sure they get employed. The rationale for work-based learning, some people learn differently. It reduced the cost of recruitment and some other things as we go forward. So we focus on making sure these kids have summer jobs, because while they're in school, it's hard to get them employed. So how do we make sure that we get employers to buy in to get these students summer employment, then they'll start getting working maybe after school, and then before you know it, they've got a full-time employment. At least they get a chance to experience it. Because we know most people don't get hired until they know someone, right? Most of us got employed because people knew who we were and they recognized our talent. And we try to remind our students that people get hired for hard skills, but they get fired for soft skills. So we make sure we express to them the importance of what are those soft skills that are needed so they can stay employed and build their relationships so they can go to the next level. So we were fortunate this first year out that we secured 71 summer internships. We established a relationship with employees to move this forward. And then we increased the understanding of messaging that resonates with employers that this is a value proposition model. I mean, we've been talking about net present value, internal rate of return, value propositioning, all those business terms which are relevant. But this way we translate it towards this body, this work, this builds our community. And we don't want to have a community that's not going to be able to move forward by having this cooperative relationship with the business community. And that's it. So lunch, right?